کنفرانس در مجلس اعیان انگلستان. سپاه پاسداران را لیست گذاری کنید. تغییر رژیم در ایران پیش شرط صلح و ثبات در خاورمیانه.
سخنرانی خانم مریم رجوی رئیس جمهور برگزیده مقاومت ایران و گروهی از نمایندگان مجلسین انگلستان.
فراخوان نمایندگان مجلسین به دولت انگلستان برای لیست‌گذاری تروریستی سپاه پاسداران و مقابله با جنگ‌افروزی‌های رژیم در منطقه.
خانم مریم رجوی: خامنه‌ای و سپاه پاسدارانش برای فرار از سرنگونی آتش یک جنگ مهیب را در خاورمیانه برافروختند.
من از 2 دهه پیش بارها تأکید کردم که جنگ افروزی این رژیم در کشورهای منطقه از برنامه اتمی‌اش 100 بار خطرناکتر است.
خامنه‌ای در جنگ افروزی در منطقه و ادامه اعدام در داخل ایران روی بیعملی اروپا و آمریکا حساب باز کرده است. هر گونه کشتار بیگناهان و غیر نظامیان سوخت رساندن به فاشیسم دینی در ایران است و به رژیم سپر و سرپوشی برای مهار کردن قیام و گریز از سرنگونی می‌دهد.
ما از 2 دهه پیش تأکید کرده ایم که سپاه پاسداران باید در لیست تروریستی قرار بگیرد. تأخیر در این نامگذاری راه را برای افزایش نفوذ سپاه و استفاده از امکانات اروپا برای پیشبرد پروژه‌های اتمی، صدور تروریسم و جنگ افروزی و دسترسی به تجهیزات سرکوب باز گذاشته است.
زمان آن است که پارلمان انگلستان از دولت این کشور بخواهد مبارزه مردم ایران برای سرنگونی رژیم و همچنین نبرد مشروع جوانان ایران علیه سپاه پاسداران را به رسمیت بشناسد.
نمایندگان مجلسین انگلستان از احزاب مختلف این کشور، کارشناسان خاورمیانه و تروریسم و نمایندگان جوامع ایرانی در انگلستان در کنفرانسی در پارلمان انگلستان نقش ویرانگر رژیم آخوندی در منطقه و آینده اعتراضات مردمی در ایران را مورد بحث قرار دادند. در این کنفرانس سخنرانان تأکید کردند که رژیم ایران فعالانه در حال دامن زدن به جنگ دیگری در خاورمیانه است تا بقای خود را در تهران تضمین کند، چرا که قادر نبوده قیام مردمی برای تغییر واقعی و دموکراتیک در ایران را به رغم تعداد بی سابقه اعدام‌ها سرکوب کند. سخنرانان از دولت انگلستان خواستند که سپاه پاسداران را که هم مسئول سرکوب داخلی و هم عامل صدور تروریسم دولتی رژیم به خاورمیانه و سایر نقاط جهان است، لیست گذاری کند. خانم مریم رجوی رئیس جمهور برگزیده مقاومت ایران پیامی به کنفرانس مجلس اعیان انگلستان فرستاد.
Honorable members of the House of Lords, dear friends, the Honorable Lord Alton, your name reminds us of defense of human rights. Greetings to you all. I thank you for your efforts in support of the Iranian people's resistance for freedom and democracy. The current situation in Iran has 4 important features: repressive mobilization to prevent the next uprising, a strong public anger, the expansion of PMOI resistance units in dozens of cities, and the IRGC's warmongering abroad. More than 600 individuals have been executed in Iran since January 2023. Thousands of prisoners are on death row, and women who suffer from the worst kinds of discrimination. Last year, in these days, there was a major uprising in Iran in more than 280 cities. The regime's security forces killed at least 750 protesters and wounded more. 30,000 were arrested. According to the regime, 5,000 IRGC guards were wounded during the uprising and some 200 guards were killed. Therefore, the regime has realized that it is in the phase of being overthrown. Over the past year, the PMOI resistance units carried out over 3,000 anti-repression operations. Various sectors of society organized thousands of strikes and protests. Last Friday, security forces opened fire and tear gas on people and children in Zahedan and arrested hundreds. These events have further frightened the regime from the next uprising. Khamenei and his revolutionary guards have started a vicious war in the Middle East to escape their overthrow. If it wasn't for this regime, the current war would not happen. The Mullah's regime has been the most significant obstacle to Middle East peace over the past 3 decades. Khomeini, the founder of this religious dictatorship, in his will demanded the overthrow of regional governments and the establishment of an Islamic state. The root cause of the wars of the past 40 years in the region, especially the current war, is the Mullah's regime. This regime was at war with Iraq for 8 years, while the war could be avoided. The IRGC has been commanding a criminal war against the people of Syria since 2011. The clerical regime has been one of the main parties to the war in Yemen since 2015. It has continued its meddling in Iraq through its terrorist proxies, and for years, a state of war has dominated Lebanon through one of the regime's paramilitary groups. Khamenei has stated that if he does not fight in Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, he must fight with the protesters in Tehran and other Iranian cities. I have emphasized many times since 2 decades ago that the regime's warmongering in the region is 100 times more dangerous than its nuclear program. The regime pretends to defend the cause of Palestinians, while in reality, the regime is their enemy. Khamenei counts on the inaction of Europe and the United States in provoking war in the region and continued executions in Iran. In his speech on the 17th of October this year, Khamenei justified the slaughter of civilians. His foreign minister constantly warns that their hands are on the trigger. In such circumstances, it is crucial to find the right solution. The clerical regime has not paid any price for 4 decades of exporting terrorism, warmongering, and meddling in other countries in the Middle East. To achieve peace and freedom, one should target the head of the snake in Tehran. In recent days, the regime has been warned to stay away from the conflict. These warnings are ineffective. The regime must be held accountable for stoking the war. To put out the fire, the world must stand against the party that fuels the fire. Otherwise, the regime will start the war in another place and in another way. Any form of killing innocent civilians provides fuel to religious fascism in Iran. It gives them a shield and cover to contain the uprising and avoid being toppled. Unfortunately, the Western countries have ignored 3 decades of warning and revelations of the Iranian resistance about regimes, warmongering, and particularly the role of the IRGC and the terrorist Quds force and its proxies. Since 2 decades ago, we insisted that the IRGC must be designated as a terrorist entity. Delaying in this regard will enable the IRGC to increase its influence to pursue its nuclear projects using European facilities, export of terrorism and warmongering, and having access to equipment used for suppression in Iran. Therefore, first, it is time that the UK Parliament ask its government to designate the IRGC as a terrorist group as soon as possible. Second, recognize the Iranian people's struggle to overthrow the regime as well as the legitimate fight of the Iranian youth against IRGC. With all my greetings to members of UK parliaments for advocating democracy and human rights in Iran. I thank you all.